Damn, it's chilly. So, we're finally here. The beginning, the end. I suppose which it is doesn't matter much now. All that I know is that for a long while, I've been watching a fish tank. Inside this fish tank, there are three goldfish. They have the power to revive each other, but only after they have survived the encounter, the poison in the water. The name of the fish tank is Escape from Tarkov. Tarkov is defined as a realistic milsim. However, this is defining it by its coat of paint, of which it delivers in spades. The guns and attachments are all fashioned after real-world equivalents, and the environments are huge, sprawling, and immersive. The gunplay has you deal with needing to repack the ammo you shot, reserve enough space for magazines, and ensure the parts you use are compatible. Guns can jam based on durability, or if you have the wrong ammunition. There are 11 maps: Factory, Woods, Customs, Interchange, Reserve, Streets of Tarkov, Shoreline, The Lab, Lighthouse, Ground Zero, and The Labyrinth. Factory is inside an abandoned factory with an office space. Woods is in a forest with a sawmill, different types of military encampments, and villages. Interchange is an abandoned two-story mall. Reserve is an abandoned military base, underground bunker, and radar tower. Streets of Tarkov is literally set in the streets of Tarkov City, with trash buildings and roads that seem like they all lead you in circles. Shoreline is on a coastline with villages, a water power plant, a pier, and a 3-story health resort. The lab is a secret underground medical and weapon facility. Lighthouse is set on another coastline with chalets, villages, a highly guarded lighthouse, and a water treatment plant overrun with rogue military. Ground Zero is akin to Streets of Tarkov, but instead focuses on one street with high rises surrounding it. And finally, the Labyrinth is a secret ritualistic weapon facility located underneath the health resort on Shoreline, taking inspiration from the Greek myth of the Minotaur's Labyrinth. The attention to detail in Tarkov is only part of what makes it unique. The thing that really helps all these settings pop, makes them more immersive, and pulls it all together is the lack of information the game immediately tells you. There's no map to pull up in-game, there's nothing that tells you the exact bullets left in your mag, and there's nowhere that tells you how to escape from Tarkov. This is all the surface level of what Tarkov is. Standalone, the scope of the environment is incredible, but it doesn't get fully realized until you pair it with the gameplay loop. When I refer to the gameplay loop in Tarkov, I'm referring to the actions every player takes to gain some form of progress in the game. In simplest terms, the player kits up, goes into raid, lives or dies, and starts over at kitting up again. A system of risk and reward where the player's progress can be defined by gaining money, gear, or experience at the risk of their current money or gear. Overall, it seems pretty simple. However, because of the design choices made for an immersive experience, Tarkov is akin to learning an entire language. This happens due to the game leaving a lot of gaps for the player to interpret or learn. For example, let's start with the difference between living in a raid and dying in one. Firstly, a raid is when you enter one of the maps, and one of 4 things can end a raid. You can extract, die, go missing in action, or AWOL. Extracting requires some form of map knowledge to traverse from a spawn point to a designated area to leave the raid alive. You can die in a raid to a multitude of things, including, but not limited to, thrown grenades, gunshots, out-of-bounds landmines, out-of-bounds snipers, grenades tied with a tripwire, exhaustion, dehydration, poison, a giant sledgehammer, grenade launchers, mounted machine guns, and mounted grenade launchers. Going missing in action happens when the timer of a raid expires and you have failed to extract. Lastly, AWOL is when you disconnect from a raid willingly from the escape menu option. There are 2 types of enemies you'll encounter: other human players and AI bots. We'll talk about the human players later, so for now, the main focus is the AI. To understand them easier, I'm going to put them into 4 different groups. First is regular scavs. These guys spawn periodically throughout the raid with low to middling gear, and typically travel around some form of map landmarks. Second is sniper scavs. On top of some of the maps, there are certain spots where they can spawn, with some form of longer range weapon to snipe with. Third are raiders. Raiders have higher tier gear and better AI than regular scavs. However, they only spawn during certain scenarios, making them more rare to encounter. They're the easiest to find on the lab location, as no regular scavs spawn, and instead are replaced by raiders. The next easiest way is to find them as guards for a boss, which brings us to our last group. There are a total of 16 different bosses in Tarkov. They are important not only because of the threat they pose, but also the rewards that can be gained from them. Each boss has some form of unique trademark gear, some of which can only be obtained by the boss who has it. They are also unique by only spawning around certain landmarks of their respective maps. The lion's share of these bosses only inhabit one map and are considered the main boss of their respective map. The remaining 3 can spawn on multiple different maps and behave differently. Partisan can spawn and roam anywhere on customs, woods, shoreline, and lighthouse, and lays down tripwire grenades. Cultist Priest spawns between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. on customs, woods, shoreline, ground zero, and factory. He and his guards are dressed in all black and hide prone to attack with poison knives and suppressed weapons. And last but not least, Santa. He's been around the last couple Christmas events, and even though he's typically a jolly guy, if you piss him off, he will put up a fight. These are Tarkov's bosses. When they are paired with the other AI groups in the immersive setting, it turns each map into a warzone obstacle course from spawn to extract. Players must go through one of these obstacle courses every time they want to progress, and by extracting from one, the re-kitting phase begins. Kitting up is when a player is prepping for a raid by utilizing the resources in their stash that they have accumulated from successful extracts. Some of these resources are straightforward, like guns, magazines, armor, rigs, and backpacks, for example. However, there are many items that are not as straightforward. The item system is just as complex as the raid system due to the omission of information. An item's innate value can be determined by its sell value to traders, barters, whether it is needed for a quest, or if it is needed for a hideout upgrade. The other piece that can fluctuate an item's value is the flea market, where players can buy and list the items they have with other players. Flea market is a point of controversy right now, so I'll be looping back around to it later. And then there's the wipes, where everything resets about every 6 months. A wipe is defined by 2 things: a sizable update to the game that adds and tweaks items, maps, progression, and resetting all players back to the beginning of progression. Because of this, typically a wipe draws in a bigger portion of the player base, as everyone is on the same playing field again. But just because everyone is on the same playing field, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're all playing the same game. That might sound crazy. I mean, how can quite literally millions of players playing the same update at the same starting point not be playing the same game? Well, in the beginning, there were 2 groups, rats and chads. Being a rat is defined by playing slower, often to the point of sitting in a corner with low tier gear and fearful of dying to a chad. And chad, well, I think it's easier to just show it to you.
Oh my fucking god, get smoked!
To give more insight to when I started playing Tarkov, the first 3-ish years I played, every wipe had a gun or ammo type that was meta and perceived as better than most, if not all, other weapons. My first wipe was the last AS-Val VSS wipe, with the following wipes being a toss-up between the HK, Mutant, and some sort of 7.62 NATO gun. Specifically, it was usually the MDR. With my retrospective knowledge of Tarkov, I would say the reason Chads were so good at the game was typically because they had a lot more playtime, experience, and map knowledge on top of using these meta weapons. It also wasn't uncommon for a Chad player to have a main map that they played and had expertise in. Rats were more of a casual crowd, who were still learning and didn't have the time or the passion to break the game down to that level. I would say they were having more innocent and ignorant fun, if it weren't for the elephant in the room that is extract camping. Extract camping is exactly what it sounds like. Go to an area near an extract, find a spot to sit, and wait for people who are at the home stretch of their raids. Then kill them, loot their stuff, and conveniently for you, you have an extract 10 feet from you. Sounds dumb? Yes. Does it work? Yes. Extract camping has been around forever, but I wouldn't say it was super popularized until General Sam's video where he does a Silence of the Lambs bit and proceeded to make everyone permanently afraid of the D2 extract on reserve. The repercussions of this video are that anytime that I myself am not extract camping D2, I will not even chance going down there. Some people, mostly extract camping victims, wanted extract camping turned into a bannable offense. Gee, I wonder why. Extract camping aside, Chads were definitely leading the arms race of being the dominant part of the player base up until one fateful update. 12.12, or the inertia update, added more weight to movement and more drawbacks for trying to move too aggressively. Jump peeking, bunny hopping, and jiggle peeking were effectively gone overnight. Leading up to this update, many Chads, especially vocal streamers, threatened quitting the game entirely, since this update gutted their entire playstyle. I say gutted because that was the exaggeration of the time by the Chad community. The realistic changes were that borderline teleporting with movement became impossible, and certain pushing tactics had to be reworked. Another thing in this update is that grenades had to be pulled out in order to throw them, when prior it would just instantly throw the grenade. This made fights even slower, but they also added impact grenades to the game all in 12.12. Honestly, in retrospect, the amount of content pushed in this update was insane for the time and also very polarizing, but all of it was for the greater good of the game. And if you disagree with that, that's okay, but I'll get more into why later. During the time leading up to the inertia update, I was just shy of 2 years in the Tarkov and had moved into an apartment with some high school friends. I had been streaming the game a decent bit and I made some friends in the streaming community, most of which were Chads that were up in arms about this update. Their cries were not heard, and some quit immediately, not even giving the update a chance, while others had fizzled out by the end of the year. One of these streamers was the Yoinks, a Lab's main Chad. While I was riding in the previous year still learning the ropes, I watched his streams all the time and became integrated with the Labs community. You see, at the time, Labs was the Chad's playground, and Yoinks was one of many people who ran Labs religiously. The common culture was for all the players to run around and check hotspots or spawns to clear the lobby, and then have the whole map to loot to yourself. If you pressed a button for an extract, the whole map would hear which button was pressed, and it wasn't unlikely for someone to push it and kill you before you could extract. And while everyone else was doing that, I found the silliest, most lucrative, most mind-melting camping spot in Tarkov. The Planter. And from that point on, my fate and time with Tarkov would be defined by it. There are two main events that happened in this planter out of the literal thousands of times I've camped in it. One that has made me stick to this game for 3 more years into the future, and one that I believe is evidence that Tarkov has not and never will be a game that is supposed to be put into a serious competitive framework. The first event is that less than a month into the inertia update, I had been doing my usual, and had sniped a guy from the planter. The guy's name was Tone Tanks. Somehow, from this point forward, Tone and I have been Tarkov homies since. I know for a fact I would not have been as invested or spent nearly as much time playing as I currently have if it wasn't for him badgering me to play with him, and I definitely wouldn't be making this video, so I am thankful for it. Cheesy bullshit aside, soon after Tone and I started playing, I had a realization that although he definitely pushed more fights than I did, we both enjoyed the Rat side and the Chad side of Tarkov playstyles. It was honestly very refreshing, as there wasn't much overlap as today, and it was very much one side or the other. Tone and I played a lot of Tarkov, and I would say both of us were decent. We both knew a few maps inside and out, and played off each other well enough for us to get accepted to participate in a small-scale tourney. At the time, there was no arena to play, and the community was left to their own devices to create an artificial competitive environment. The result were these tourneys hosted by fellow streamers that had varying rules to award points, and whoever got the most points won. These tourneys, while cool and fun, did not prove anybody was the best or an untouchable god of a player. As a matter of fact, Tone and I were comparatively dog shit to most tourney attendees. It was in between 2 tourneys that the second planner event occurred. One tourney was hosted by Endra and had a lot of the popular content creators of the time participating in it. The winners of it were Value Fries and the Apollo C, two incredible players who I was familiar with, as Value Fries was a streamer that replaced my second monitor when Yoinks retired, and Apollo and Fries duoed all the time. At the same time, I had been streaming with Tone to practice for our tourney that happened the next day. It was a smaller scale one hosted by Lip Free that Cryodrolic, another incredible player and longtime friend, and his duo, Bears, would win. During our practice, I got Twitch rated by Glorious E, one of the bigger Tarkov Chad streamers. Toad and I completed our customs raid with a collective 9 PMC kills between the two of us, and with all the thousands of viewers watching, he threw out the idea of going to labs. Unbeknownst to me, Fries and Apollo had decided to do the same after their tourney victory. Let's just say thousands of people saw Fries die from a planter, and thousands of people saw Tracksuit Chad fall to the planter. I would say that if Tarkov were a fair and competitive game, this never would have happened. But wait, what the fuck does a tracksuit have to do with anything? Well, the Attic tracksuit is a purely cosmetic item that is completely bullshit to get. To get this back then, you had to kill the interchange boss, Killa, 50 times after accepting the Stylish One quest. Killa can spawn anywhere in the mall in interchange. He has some of the most protective armor in the game, and only have like a 30-ish% chance to spawn on any given raid. It is so time consuming and soul sucking to do this that practically only full-time streamers or cheaters went for it, and because of this, I was well aware the likelihood of me knowing who I had just killed skyrocketed. In this era, there were 3 milestones that if you were the first to do, it was this preconceived notion that you get more popular from it, because clickbait. One of these was tracksuit, one was getting 1 billion rubles, and the last was Kappa. Kappa is obtained by completing a bunch of the quests, reaching a certain level, and having all the streamer items. Kappa was a sign of completing a wipe, as most progression past that point is really difficult and doesn't unlock that much. The last Kappa I obtained was the inertia wipe. I wanted to reclaim it going into the next wipe in June of 2022, which added the Lighthouse Island and the Rogue bosses. This wipe made me start to hate Tarkov. You see, I enjoyed it up until a very pivotal moment about 4 months in. Everything was perfect until I was 2 quests away from unlocking Kappa. One requiring the killing of the rogue bosses, and the other being the quest capturing outposts. The issue is that these 2 quests were hell and infuriating. The rogues were impossible to find because they spawned on 4 different maps, but only one at any given time, 20% of the time. Their AI was incredibly bullshit. It would shoot you through walls and full auto mag dump headshot you from 200 meters out while 1 or 2 of them are pushing you. Standalone, okay. Maybe that's okay. But then you're competing with half your lobby to kill them, so you better get a close spawn, and to even know which map to find them on in the first place, you have to look on a community website made specifically to report when you saw them. I am not exaggerating when I say I streamed for 12 hours one day, specifically setting out to only hunt them, and only saw them twice out of the 30 plus raids I did. Then there's capturing outposts. This quest required you to kill 15 players at Stronghold on Customs, the med base on Woods, and the pier on Shoreline. In practice, Stronghold was perfectly fine. However, if you didn't get the closest spawn to the Woods and Shoreline landmarks, the odds of you even encountering a person were slim to none, much less killing them. The only loophole for this quest was the way server selection used to be. Servers back then were separated by cities, and you could select any amount of them, from 1 to all of them. This server system is what helped tourneys run, as all entrants in a tourney would be told to select the same server or two to increase the odds of competitors running into each other. It also allowed for things such as a community day for streamers, where they could take over lobbies with their viewers and help them with quests or loot. However, this also allowed for quests like capturing outposts to have a loophole because you and a friend could separately queue to supply player kills for this quest. The server system was beyond abusable, and after the day of not finding the goons, I found myself slowly getting angrier and angrier the more I played until I gave up on Kappa for the wipe. The aftermath of my crash out was that I began to distance myself more and more from the game. I went from playing every day to maybe once or twice a week. Don't get me wrong, I still love the game for what it was, and the fact that there's nothing else coming close to even rivaling it, but there was some luster lost when I gave up on trying to reach the end game. The wipe following this, they added the Streets of Tarkov map. This is where I think things began to really derail for me. Streets was the first of 3 instances where everyone was talking about it like it was never going to happen because it would be so cool, only for it to turn out like coming home and seeing your goldfish belly up. Streets was teased as this huge, expansive map with like 40 player spawns and it was going to be the crown jewel of the game. Then it finally launched, and well, there were a couple of issues. The big initial issue was the performance issues. When Streets released, you needed a supercomputer to get 60 FPS. If you had some form of magnifying scope and aim down sights, you would get 30, because doing this makes the game render twice, because shitty spaghetti Unity coding. The way a lot of people got around this initially before developers optimized the map was playing night raids, because there isn't as much to render. The secondary issue was the amount of loot on the map. Not that it's too little, but too abundant. When Reserve and Lighthouse were introduced, they also had this loot problem, either because balancing is hard or to incentivize people to play the new map. However, Streets was not only a bigger example of this, but it still has this issue because of the design choice of the exact reason why it was so hyped up. By making this map huge compared to the other maps, you have 2 roads to go down. One is making it empty with a lot of space between landmarks, and the other is jam-packing landmarks. Obviously, option 1 is bad because it'd be boring, but having option 2 makes it so if you're playing for just looting or money making, all the other maps are obsolete. Even after the initial Streets wipe, they slightly nerfed it, but they added Kaban, the designated Streets boss, to effectively put the loot right back where it was. They've since still tweaked it, but it still has and probably always will have this issue. This also doesn't include the fact that on top of all this, some new Kappa required quests were added to include Streets, so you were forced to play it if you wanted to reach the end game, which means a lot of people were forced to have an interactive slideshow through Streets if they wanted to obtain Kappa. All of these issues combined to turn this anticipated crown jewel into nothing more than what you drop on the porcelain throne. But the show must go on. The Kaban wipe wasn't anything too crazy. The big 3 here were adding Kaban, quality of life fixes, and right, dynamic loot. To be brief, prior to the dynamic loot, every bag, box, crate on the map were always there every time. This change made it so sometimes some of them wouldn't be there, and added some more that could spawn instead. Really what this change affected was stash runs. Stash runs were hitting all the secret stashes some of the maps had, as they typically had really good loot if you had a couple handfuls of them. This was a particularly popular on Interchange, as you didn't have to go inside the mall to get big, and then promptly had the option to exit camp for greed after. Overall, while this was an unpopular change, in retrospect I think it was a good one, mainly because running the same route a million times gets repetitive and boring, even if people act like it isn't. We are now in December of 2023, and we have 2 Christmas presents under our tree from the developers this year. One is a wipe where Ground Zero was added and marketed as the beginner map where now all players start their quest lines. This wipe also introduced achievements and view profiles to see achievements, and the new armor system where plates can be swapped out, and the hitboxes for all the armor were reworked. The BTR vehicle was added that could take you for a ride on the streets and woods maps, and Shoreline got a rework. The big thing here is achievements, as now for the first time ever, something would persist after a wipe. Remember Tracksuit? Now all you have to do is kill Killa 100 times in a wipe, and you'll have Tracksuit as an unlockable permanently. Wow! Thanks, BattleState Games! What's the other gift? Oh, another belly up goldfish. This goldfish's name was Escape from Tarkov Arena, or Arena for short. Arena was yet another one of these occurrences that was unbelievably hyped and teased, and then fell short. Remember those tourneys I talked about? Arena was supposed to be those competitors' salvation. Arena is a 5v5 team-based shooter that uses Tarkov's main game weapon and movement systems. It's similar to Counter-Strike in the regards of the main mode being played is a round-based bomb scenario. There's also a Call of Duty domination game mode and a round-based mode with no bomb. Later on, they would add a Call of Duty free-for-all mode. It sounds great and fun, so where to go wrong? As I see it, there were 3 main contributors. First was that playing costed rubles, which were for only Arena at first, and you only gained rubles if you won your game. These rubles were also used for the classes to unlock new tiers of whichever class you were playing. The issue with classes, however, For that to unlock the next tier, you not only needed a certain amount of rubles, but reached a required experience amount while playing as that class. To be in ranked queue, you had to be a certain tier of class and have multiple unlocked. Wait. This all sounds too grindy, right? Isn't this supposed to be some Tarkov competitive player's wet dream and not a hassle? The third and final issue was that Arena had really bad desynchronization issues, where some clients weren't matching up and you could hit someone 20 times and maybe they got hit once, or you couldn't see them and they peeked a corner and killed you. These three issues is what caused Arena to belly up, and subsequently lost a lot of the hype surrounding it. Oh well, at least the wipe is good, right? It was in the middle of this wipe that I had practically phased out of Tarkov. I played maybe once or twice a month, and I wasn't enjoying the game as much. My PC had also gotten a little outdated, and the focus wasn't on optimizations, so most of the maps had turned into a slideshow for me. I moved on to playing roguelikes such as Inscription or PokeRogue, and later in the year Valve's Deadlock. I was now at the other end of the spectrum when it came to Tarkov players, from the dedicated everyday grind player to the hey man, want to run a couple raids? Casual player. It had lost its luster entirely for me.
You got a guy peeking at parking?
Yeah, it's the same guy. It's the mutant guy, I guess. Oh, there he goes. And shouldn't have touched the body, dumbass. What the fuck were you doing? I still played some when the next wipe came around in August of 2024, which reworked the factory to make it bigger, added the boss partisan, grenade tripwires, and the transit system. The transit system allowed players to use designated locations, typically on the edges of the map, that could be used to queue onto a separate map, and essentially turn the raid into a multi-map crusade. It was cool and novel, but not enough to hook me back in. The game would wipe again around Christmas, and I got some good fun out of it since Tone had taken off work and I had gotten my annual winter sickness. Little did I know, Tarkov had gotten it too, since they added the winter season to the maps, along with the Christmas event, a customs rework, and a prestige system. Prestige in Tarkov is now the second thing to persist through wipes, and unlocks some minor buffs and cosmetics for each level of prestige you obtain. In order to prestige, you had to tame Kappa, have your hideout upgraded, and have high enough skills and rubles. I knew I wasn't going to go for it, for my days of grinding for that were long over. Tone said maybe he'd get it, but you'd have to see how much he would end up playing. Fast forward a few months to March, and there was a Tarkov event where Labyrinth was introduced. I had begun playing semi-regularly again, as now a lot of optimization happened on the maps. I wanted to get this event's achievement for completing all the related quests, and so did Tone, up until the 30 PMC kill quest, which again was just annoying. 30 standalone is already a big amount of PMCs, but getting to the Labyrinth alone was difficult. All the other maps you can select from the menu, but Labyrinth requires you to go to a transit in the basement of the west wing of the health resort on Shoreline to access it. Due to the novelty of it and the obscene amount of loot to be found in the Labyrinth, practically whole Shoreline lobbies would end up at this one door. You have two choices. Attempt to get there as early as possible before everyone else in transit quickly, or go later and risk getting killed by someone camping the door. Even when you got into Labyrinth, if you transit solo, there were only 5 other players in the raid, and everyone was playing extremely slow and scared. Part of this is fear of the other players. Part of this is because of the luck of getting in the first place, and part of this is because of the bosses. Labyrinth has a juiced up Tagilla that eats bullets like they're an all-you-can-eat buffet and is immune to grenades, and once you kill him, there's a chance that killer can spawn. We played the event, but gave up on the achievement upon seeing that quest. About a month later, Tone informs me that the only thing he is missing for Kappa is the smoke balaclava, and begs me to help him find it. I had gotten addicted to running night factory raids to get gear from players for the once a week Tone and I played. And because of this stupid face mask, I had gotten sucked back into Tarkov entirely. I started to look forward to playing for the first time in years. I was actually enjoying the game. All to help my friend find a mask. And when we did find it, I helped him get through the early game quests, and he was able to get his second prestige. The whole time I was having a blast. We both started to look forward to the next wipe. The next wipe is the current one, the hardcore wipe. It is the most controversial wipe ever, even more than the inertia one. It is the last wipe before the full release of the game, where it is taken out of beta and can be purchased on Steam. The reason BattleState Games made this wipe is twofold. One, to mix things up in an attempt to give more of that classic Tarkov feel, while also soft launching some changes for the full release. There would be no flea market, the hideout would require more items to build, but no longer did the items have to be found in raid. Rare loot spawns would be reduced, most of the maps would have to be transited to, your secure container could no longer hold money, ammo, or meds outside of stims, items would sell for less and be more expensive to buy, boss spawns would be 100%, less experience gained from kills and more gained from extracting, and the AI would be harder. Additionally, the first day had no quests, and the trade levels would be locked until rolled out later. Public consensus was that these changes were the worst ever. There was non-stop complaining about them. People were pulling out Twitch viewership charts to show this was the least popular wipe ever, but BattleState Games seemed to do what they did with inertia and doubled down, sort of. Whether or not the no quest was supposed to last longer than a day is up in the air, but after enough complaints, they were back day 2. Customs, Factory, and Ground Zero were the starting 3 maps, and after 3 days Woods was added, then about a week later, all the maps were back. Flea Market came back about 2 months in. Boss spawns were slowly adjusted down to 50%. And then, perhaps the strangest thing, something I never thought would ever happen, happened. They announced softcore changes, which rolled back a majority of the hardcore changes, disabled the hardcore achievements, turned the flea market into a free-for-all, and buffed the shit out of loot spawns. And, after continuous years of begging and complaining, with a preliminary test on Arena, inertia was rolled back up to 70%. Finally, Tarkov was saved. Right? I look at the fish tank, only to see one fish still alive. Something was still terribly wrong. I know and have known the remaining fish is for the full release. Another thing that years of hype, excitement, and doubt have been leading up to. If Tarkov was released as it was with these software changes, it wouldn't fix the glaring issues it would still have. And if anything, it would cause a lot more, and this last remaining fish would die, and slowly, the tank would rot until its removal. My take on the hardcore wipe is probably unpopular, but it is the most fun I've had with a wipe since my first one. Tone and I both agree that it is the most engaged we were with a wipe. Without flea market, decision making on what items you looted and space management was the most important it had ever been. The bosses being a guaranteed spawn was fun and interesting, as in all other wipes they practically never spawned, and that forced you to go for them if they did, since you weren't sure when the opportunity would happen again. I thought the transit idea was cool, except for the fact that the easiest wood transit was on Factory, and people camped in this little building. Transits were also buggy, with people spawning in close proximity, and if the system wasn't as functionally broken as it was, it could have been something special. Factory being a starting map in general was the big issue. I knew as soon as I saw it, all the people grinding would farm Tagella since he was 100%, had some of the highest grade armor in the game, and some good mid-game ammo. This, of course, happened, and with starting gear and low high-tier ammo spawns, anyone running this gear was borderline invincible. If the maps had swapped out Shoreline for Factory, some of this could have been alleviated slightly, but I digress. People saw the advantage and took it. Can you blame them? The traded progression was a good way to keep the playing field level for longer, which is why everyone plays a wipe in the first place. The secure container changes to money, meds, and ammo were good because now people actually had things on their bodies that were valuable, especially in the early wipe. The hideout changes were okay, but doubling what was needed wasn't necessary, and did make leveling the hideout more tedious, even though it seemed like the devs wanted us to utilize the hideout more. Even when the softcore changes came around, I didn't hate those. It gave opportunity to use guns I normally wouldn't have access to due to them being late game only, and the less inertia meant more carry weight, which means I got more loot. Both sides of the coin have goods and bads though. Some people don't like the tedious nature of the hardcore wipe, and some don't like how Call of Duty the game feels with the softcore changes. I've spent a lot of time theorizing a way to find a true middle ground for everyone, but the more I analyze people's reactions, comments, and complaints, it just seems as if no one can agree. It's almost as if no one wants to have fun in a video game, or if they do have fun, only they can. My proof? The one day of no quests. All I saw were complaints about it, and all I have to ask to those that did, without Tarkov quests, are you akin to a blind man without a stick? Do you need to be ordered what to do to have fun? Do you need to be told to go out and find some shit you'll need in the coming days, or things you'll need for your hideout? Do you need to be told to go out and shoot some things and extract with a huge boost to your wipe? Do you need to be told to go attempt to have fun? I've seen the patterns of the community over 5 years, and they are always the same. My biggest problem is the streamers, a community I was once a part of, because not one seems to be self-aware that they shoot themselves in the foot constantly. Let's collectively complain about how bad this wipe is going to be before we can even play it. Then be surprised when the Twitch viewership in the game player base is the lowest it's ever been for a wipe. Let's say hardcore is tedious and hurts the casual player base, but most of the casual player base you're white-knighting for doesn't even remember pre-inertia, which is what you scream BattleState over all the time so you can go back to dog-walking enemies. This is not a personal attack on anyone, because I can also say it applied to me, but 99.9% of Tarkov streamers can fit in the 5 archetypes. The 30 to 40-year-old dad, the know-it-all snarky Chad, e-girl, tutor, new player. Some fit into multiple of these. And I know at one point or another, I have been all of them. I've been around town and listened to enough divorced dad rock. I wasn't a Chad, but I was definitely a snarky know-it-all. During my heavy streaming phase, I had long hair, painted my nails, and had the pink kitty headphones, so I get called trans and berated for it all the time, even though I'm not. I tried to teach people who came in the chat all the time, and when I started streaming, I was barely a year in the Tarkov, and definitely still new. The only true exception I've seen is the Burnt Peanut, who is the Tarkov personality right now. What does he do differently? Well, he actually has a personality. He's funny and he's good at the game, but not an asshole about it. A Reddit comment I saw put it perfectly. Quote, he's the only streamer who doesn't play Tarkov like he's at a funeral. Peanut is one of the reasons a multitude of people who have quit have come back because he's so entertaining. Most importantly, above all, he's having fun. I'm not saying it's bad to be one of these archetypes, but you do reap what you sow. And again, I'm not saying this to personally attack anyone. If anything, this is your wake-up call to become a better streamer and truly differentiate yourself other than your voice and your face. A lot of the softcore versus hardcore debates remind me a lot of the wobbling debate in Melee. Wobbling was a technique the Ice Climbers had where you could grab your opponent and have them be grabbed infinitely. It was an easy, completely tournament-legal strategy, although despised for years, until a top player lost to a nobody who was wobbling. Then they took to Twitter and 2 parties arose, a party for wobbling and a party against wobbling. It's of zero surprise that the pro-wobbling party had people who wobbled or had an easy matchup against the Ice Climbers, and the anti-wobbling party were people that were getting owned by wobbling. People root for what benefits them or their playstyle the most, and with enough radicalization of the people who didn't care, wobbling was banned. Unfortunately, it's not so easy for us in Tarkov land because it's not a technique, it's the entirety of the way the game is played. The big contentions, I don't even feel like the actual changes, but rather inertia in the flea market. Any other issue, supposing it's implemented correctly and balanced, people will get over it. If both these things are in a position where everyone feels it's equal, balanced, and fun for people who play 3 raids a wipe versus 3,000 a wipe, then maybe, just maybe, the last fish won't belly up, and the other 2 can be on the path to revival. Inertia is the easy one. It just needs to be tweaked a little bit so people can't do pendulum swings while shooting and bunny hop across wide openings, while still having some freedom of movement. Period. End of story. No inertia and all inertia is too extremes, and it needs the sweet spot. Now, we can finally talk about the flea market. This entire 5-year period has had the flea market in Tarkov. As I said prior, its main function is to buy and sell items between players, whether this be keys, items to barter, items for hideout, weapons, armor, you name it. There have been a lot of items that have been banned from the flea market as they were viewed as too strong or the balanced progression. There have been wipes where the flea market items were usable for hideout, and wipes where they weren't. In general, the flea market has been well received, but to be honest, it is the biggest issue. Anytime something new is added, so many decisions have to be made. Is it too strong and needs to be banned? How expensive should it be? How often should it spawn? It allows for ease of access in the casual play by being able to easily farm money and get items for progression. However, I'm going to do a hot take here and say that money farming is bad. Why? Well, it's complex, but to help my point, I'm going to bring up a quote from a streamer. The streamer is Stankrat, a streamer who got popular in 2024 and helped destigmatize the ratting culture. In regards to the Labyrinth event, on its popularity, and why people enjoyed it so much, he posted this tweet. I mainly want to focus on this third section here. Quote, events like this, where the player is actively increasing tension throughout the raid and is greatly rewarded for their success, is the recipe that has gotten us all hooked on Tarkov. One solid raid will pay for the many failures. Many of us may not realize, but that's what brings us back to Tarkov. It's not necessarily the gunplay and map design, etc., although these are essential components and probably what first got us into the game, but it's that dopamine serotonin release we get after finally extracting, juiced out of our mind, in an adrenaline-induced raid cultivated by the many deaths prior. End quote. I 100% agree with this. Nothing has a great feel of accomplishment as getting out filled to the gill with items you need, or high-tier gear and loot, especially after getting Tarkov'd a handful of times. You forget about all those bad losses because of the big gain. However, if you only have these big gains, you start to become desensitized. Dying doesn't do anything except frustrate you. Not because of the losses, but because you know you have the resources to throw at it, so you feel you deserve what you're hunting after, whether it be quests, achievements, or boss farming. While doing a bread and butter money run can be fun, over the years the flea market has become the most abusable behemoth ever. And to be honest, farming millions on the flea and having that safety net of resources makes you no different than the people farming to kill in a hardcore wipe. I don't know if it's human nature or Tarkov player nature, but consistently the people who have the most passion and time for the game find these abusable opportunities and use them to the max. It is for this reason that I believe the flea market needs to be removed. It's too abusable, it kills enjoyment without people even realizing it. That's why mid to late parts of the wipe cycle sees dips in the player base. All of the casuals have seen everything new, and the lifestyle players have created too large of a gap in what they are pursuing and the tiers of gear they can run versus the casuals. In January of this year, BattleState did an in-game survey on the flea market. The big question asked was, do you find Tarkov more engaging with the flea market closed? 48.5% of respondents said yes, 31.76% said no, and the remainder, 19.74%, was not sure. In an in-game survey on the hardcore wipe, this question was brought back, being phrased as, do you think playing with the flea market disabled is interesting? 50.1% said yes, 37.1% said no, and 12.8% said not sure. You can already see some of the radicalization of the I don't know or care people, but the yes crowd makes up half of the Tarkov player base. I'm going to assume the no voters are people who have complaints about it, which fortunately was a question in the flea market survey. Second question was, what major challenges did you face when the flea market was closed? 26.38% struggled obtaining keys required for quests, and 20.94% struggled to find found and raid items for their hideout. The following four all had about 10% each. Struggled to buy equipment items, difficulty completing quests, unable to craft certain items, and unable to purchase ammo and meds. The remaining question was how the flea market should be changed, which I'm not going to get into, because I believe I have found an answer to where you can have no flea market, fix all these changes, and still keep the feeling Stank referred to. The hideout items are the easiest to fix with two simple ingredients. Don't require found and raid, and don't double the needed items as happened with the hardcore wipe. With the nomads or ammo in the secure container, hideout, quest items, and valuables are the only things going in there anyways. It cuts back the grind and makes it fair. This leaves the lack of ability to obtain or purchase things, to which my answer is buff the loot. And by this I mean to the extent that it is with the softcore changes, if not more. Make this already immersive world more immersive. Make players actively make more decisions with their items for what they need and want. Incentivize greed to make players stay in raid longer. By making loot more plentiful and having the secure container changes, meds, gear, and items for crafting will be a lot easier to manage and come by. This leaves keys and quests as the main struggles, and there are a lot of keys that are not easy to come by. The keys I'm going to focus on are the ones that are required for Kappa that aren't barters, quest rewards, or static spawns. These keys are Dorms 114, Dorms 314, otherwise known as the Marked Room, Tape Key, Emercom Medical, Terror Group Storage Room Keycard, RB Orb 1, RB KSM, and RB ASMP. If this list sounds too short, it isn't, because with the hardcore wipe, a bunch of key spawns were added to compensate for the lack of flea market. This is good, and these should be kept in. I noticed that the shoreline keys, as I almost had a complete set when I was checking for the Nosos facility key spawns for their high sell prices. On the floor in front of each key rack was a key practically every time. So why not do this with all key racks, add a static spawn for some arbitrary quest key, as well as a couple other keys to go with it to make these worth looking at, and then put some more in each of the maps to make these worth checking for quest or loot keys. You can do this with 114, Emercon Medical, and all the RB keys to check them off the list. For the factory keycard, have it be a one use that spawns on Tagilla and has a few spawns spread out on factory to check akin to the residential keycard on labs, and that one's checked off. Have the tape key and keycard always spawn on Sanitar, but have it be a one use key. If you think that's too low, give me a second and I'll explain. As for Dorms 314, make the quest, the Cult Part 2, no longer Kappa required. I theorized for a while, and with the crazy spawns behind it, without nerfing it, it would be too much to have a consistent static spawn of the key. There's nothing else locked behind this quest, save the Lightkeeper questline, which is arguably beyond Kappa container. Now, I want all key rooms to be buffed and have multiple container spawns and at least one high tier weapon, armor, or valuable spawn to make all rooms worth looting. I am tired of going to dorms and only looting the safe keys and marked room. When was the last time you saw a gun inside a gun safe that wasn't a shitty stock shotgun and some Makarov ammo? What if you could find guns pimped out in them to help have gun diversity with the lack of flea market and decision making on what to pick up? To continue changes I would make, the bosses should be 50% outside of events. I am well aware that people will still abuse how farmable 50% is, so to compensate this, lower the tier of gear the bosses wear and then scale it throughout a wipe. Tagilla is the biggest perpetrator, so we'll use him as an example. The wiki says he can spawn not only with his traditional tier 5 helmets, but also the CQCM face mask. Make his armor have tier 4 plates at the start of a wipe, and as it progresses from mid to late wipe, the higher tier armor can be scaled back in. You can do this with all the bosses in their gear, make them difficult, but fair, and don't make the level of gear in early wipe on them be endgame level. The only boss that doesn't particularly need this treatment is Killa, as his helmet is atrocious to use, and as a boss he is one of the most difficult. The icing on the cake with these changes, certain quests require certain guns to be used to complete. The example I'll use is Test Drive Part 3, which requires you to kill PMCs with a suppressed AK-12 equipped with a Valde 1-6x scope. The problem is that the scope is found in raid only. There are no traders that offer it. Easy solution. Whatever attachments are necessary, have them be purchasable upon accepting the quest. To me, with all these changes, it sounds like Tarkov is not only more fair, but accessible to progress and easier to have these raids of huge progress and accomplishment. Now, the only remaining issue is Arena. This first part isn't an issue, but to show the effect Arena has had. In Melee, Project Slippy was created to have online play to help the scene stay alive through the COVID pandemic. This increased accessibility and thus lowered the skill floor, but due to guides and now top players could practice amongst themselves whenever they wanted, this also increased the skill ceiling. Arena has had this effect with gunfights, as prior the only way to practice was actually being in one. This has created a new breed of players that have lower hours but are playing to the pace of old school chads. Arena's issue was shown through the hardcore wipe, as now resources can be sent over to the main game and there's character cross progression. This is a cool idea, as casual and competitive players can both gain from this, but we don't want to overtune it as it was in the hardcore wipe. Lowering the amount of daily money you can send over from Arena so it's not so big that it creates another flea market scenario, and rebalancing items from ref the Arena trainer sells so they are not overwhelmingly as good as they are right now should fix this. Another issue is that Arena is and will be a separate purchase from the main game, making it a form of pay to win. With all the previous changes I stated, it may not matter much in the grand scheme of player economy, but in case it does, I'll account for this. I feel as if upon full release, more focus will shift to Arena. I believe BattleState Games wants to have Arena become an esport. Whether or not that's crazy or not remains to be seen, but it already has a battle pass. To help with exposure, if I was in their shoes, I would give a monthly free weekend so all people can get their hands on it, and in addition to this, perhaps add a weekly or bi-weekly quest to ref in the main game that upon completion gives a few days of Arena access. We already have a relatively early ref quest that does this, and more exposure couldn't hurt. To further this idea, additional rewards for this quest could be a weapon or gear that you're suspecting is imbalanced in Arena to incentivize players to use it and give feedback. With this, it'll help further the agenda of what I believe Arena is aiming to be, while not having it be an entirely paywalled gatekeep. Reggie Fils-Aimé once said,
"The game is fun. The game is a battle. If it's not fun, why bother?"
With all these changes, do you think you'd have fun? I know I would. It's funny, right? How I was complaining about everyone forcing their own changes because it benefited them. Writing the script and reflecting on all the hours I've spent in Tarkov, I tried to think of things I would have liked to have for the entirety of my playtime. This includes when I was streaming 60 hours a week and when I was playing 2 raids a month. Because of this, I hope these ideas I presented don't only benefit me. I can only hope that my cries be heard and the last remaining fish survives the full release. And should that happen, the only problem that remains is cheaters. I don't have much to say about this, other than that if you cheat, you're a bitch, and the biggest person you're fucking over is yourself. It's an epidemic for the entire video game industry right now, and I don't have an answer for it. I have one more thing to share to end this video, and it's for all my peers that miss the old Tarkov. I do too. We will never get it back. With all the new breeds of players and their paces of play, it's impossible. We will never go back to pre-inertia, but at least we can reminisce on those times. All the people mentioned throughout this video will have their links in the description. Please check them out. Thank you for watching, and enjoy.
God. Okay, dude. This is it, man. This is it. Another shoreline run. Woohoo! Let's go. I love shoreline. I love playing shoreline. It's my favorite map. It's my favorite fucking map. I love this game. I love this fucking game. I can't wait to get on this game and play tomorrow. And when I get on tomorrow, I'm gonna be so excited. And for the whole time in the morning when I'm getting ready for the rest of my day, I'm just gonna be so fucking excited to play this game. Get on shoreline, man. I can't wait. I love shoreline.
Good. That's the fastest wipe I ever seen in my life. Where?
I overheaded one, but there's still another.
Coming the other side.
Alright, he's crabbing.
What the fuck? What the fuck? Die, bro! How is he laughing? Oh, I got him!
I'm not dead.
I fucked a bunch of them up. One's dead.
Get on me, 2 men on me. I killed one. I'm getting ego peaks. He's dead. Holy shit, I'm nuts!
Yep.
Yeah.
What the fuck, bro?
Do you kiss girls?
No, where is he? Only on the mouth.
Oh, he kisses girls, bro. It's done.
Oh.
Are you in
People pink
Sandler?
side? No. I'm right above you.
Oh, hello.
I could have killed you 3 times over and you would have.
You know what? Did I just kill you? Yes. I did not mean. Yo.